Hello and welcome to another session of Talking Trees. This is the broadcast from Trees of Music, which is a campaign to plant a whole load of pernambuco trees. Pernambuco trees are the trees used to make violin bows. And we've got some other projects going on a little bit further up the coast in Brazil, connected to agroforestry and also all kinds of instruments, woods that are used to make instruments. So Talking Trees is a series which is about the connection between nature, reforestation, deforestation, and music and other aspects of culture. And we're doing this every Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And today I'm very excited to have Otávio on. He's the director of a beautiful film called A Árvore da Música, The Music Tree, which is about this fantastic tree and its importance in classical music. Welcome, Otávio. Very good to have you.
It's great to be here. My pleasure.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about your film and why did you make a film about this Pernambuco tree?
Yeah, actually, I was living in Los Angeles at that time, and I read an article about the story of the Pernambuco wood and its relationship to the music, especially classical music. It's important to say that Pernambuco wood is known in Brazil as Brazil wood, pau Brasil. And Brazil was named after this tree. You know, when the Portuguese, they arrived in Brazil, this tree was like, they have like a huge number of Brazil wood or Pernambuco wood. And then they were amazed by it, and because the wood was so perfect, it had so many uses for the tree, for the wood of this tree. So Brazil was actually named after this tree, and I was very surprised that Pernambuco wood or Brazil wood was pretty close to the extinction, and its last function was to make violin bows, violin and viola and cello bows. And I heard that there was an association of bow makers or archetiers that they were trying to replant the trees to still have this valuable material. Because until these days, you can't find a substitute for the wood of the Pernambuco wood. So it gives like a great sound and actually volume for the player to play using a Pernambuco wood bow. So it was like when it was like the first bow, I think was around 1780 or 1790 or something, and the first bow maker, his name was Sturt, and he was like a clockmaker. So he made the perfect bow when he got in touch with the Pernambuco wood, and actually Mozart, he started composing using the Pernambuco, the bow made from the Pernambuco wood, and he gave like a speed and a different volume for the player, and that was so important. It was like actually a revolution. And the other day I was thinking that if you hear every recording of a professional orchestra or a musician playing, there is a piece of Brazil in that, because professional musicians, they only use bows made of Pernambuco wood. So if you hear the Beatles on one of these instrumental songs, The Longer Winding Road, you can hear a piece of Brazil in there. If you hear a recording about Mozart, you're going to have a piece of Brazil in there, represented by the bow. So it's amazing. It's a relationship with the name of the Brazil country. And as I said, it's known as a Brazil wood here, pau Brasil. It was the perfect story to tell in a film. And actually, the film did pretty well. You know, went to various like places in the world, like Japan, United States, Portugal, and received some great awards around the world, and helped to bring awareness to this cause. Because until these days, bow makers, and they're still trying to replant these trees. You know, to have so the other generations can use it for making bows.
Absolutely, that there's a guy in your film. I forgot the name of the guy. It's a French guy, and he's talking about different materials for bows, and he talks about the carbon bows, and he looks just disgusted when he's talking about it, and he says it's like playing with a dead thing, and that playing with a Pernambuco.
It was Michael Pay. Michael Bay is one of the great sellers in the world, and its participation was like really nice because he says something, and it's nice that you just bring the subject. He says something that was like an extension of his arm, and then he plays a beautiful song and showing how it's important to have a good bow, for a musician. It's so important as it is a good violin, and it was really nice that you bring that up. It was nice.
Um, and you traveled around quite a lot for the film. Lots of footage from different places. Can you tell me about your travels?
Oh yeah, we shot in the United States, and we went to Europe. And we shot in France, this beautiful place called Coquelin. That is hard to find in the map because one of the bow makers, great bow maker, this Archetier, he was living over there, and it's one of my favorite parts of the film because we actually show all the traveling to get there, and see these guys working like they're masters. It's and the love that they have for their profession. So we went to Vienna too, another great bow maker, and we went to a bunch of places. We shot the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, and that was amazing. We went to, let me see, and then Brazil too. It was nice because we went to the original places where the Pernambuco wood was found. So we went to Bahia, we went to Ilhéus, we went to Espírito Santo, all over the Atlantic forest. So that was really nice, and to see how hard it is to preserve, because you have what they call the queimadas, where they burn the vegetation and everything, and to find real Pernambuco wood was really rare. And we found a tree that was marked. It was more than 700 years old. There was one of the reminiscence, one of those that the Portuguese saw. So I was amazed by how huge it was. And to imagine that Brazil, that this tree was all over the Atlantic forests, and today it's so hard to find one original specimen. So it's it's amazing. It was
Yeah,
amazing to have this trip and travel all over these places.
it's a story we hear a lot about the when the New World was discovered or settled. Obviously, there were people there already, but there are stories from North America, the Bay of San Francisco, where there were so many seals that they looked like paving tiles on the bay there, and there were whales in absolute abundance. And the same with the Pernambuco tree. And so much has been lost in in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, Brazil hasn't been around that long, and the Atlantic forest has been shrinking and shrinking. Our own project with Marco Raposo, we are planting. He's growing 50,000 Pernambuco saplings. Half of them are going into commercial production, or to sustainably produce violin bows and viola bows and all the rest. But the other half are going into restoration of 150 springs, because the Atlantic forest is very, very degraded, and even the fragments which remain are the Pernambuco tree is quite rare in those fragments because it's gone and been either logged legally or illegally. And one of the impacts of that is that there aren't that many adult trees that are producing seeds and then reseeding and producing more. So it's a really urgent. It's an urgent story that you're telling in your film. So how was it received, the film?
Oh, it was very well received. And in Brazil, you went to it was shown on movie theaters, on TV, and in festivals all over the world. And it was very nice because one of the festivals that is growing every year, it's the Environmental Film Festival, the DC Environmental Film Festival in Washington. And we received the prize. Actually, it was the first time that the festival gave this award, the Pauli Crocott Award at the time, for artistry in film. And there was we were very honored because they have great films about environmental. And until this day, they have this festival, and they have a subjects that really matters. about oil, about the necessity to have like more electrical, a different world, using the energy of the sun and all this kind of stuff. So it was really well received. Went to many places, from Japan to Portugal to Europe, all over Europe. So I think I was really happy with that.
Do you think that the environmental consciousness is increasing in Brazil, or do you think it's staying at the same level as it was when you made the film? When was it you made the film, actually?
At that time, I think you were in a situation that people start realizing that something has to be done. We're talking about 2010, like 10 years, 11 years ago. And sadly, because each year you have less forest, the numbers, they are really surprising in a sad way, because talking about we have 15% of the Atlantic forest, and then we have 10%. The people today are saying 5 to 7%. I'm not sure about the numbers. So it's very important to bring awareness to the Atlantic forest, because a lot of times they talk about the Amazon and the rainforest, but we're talking about the coastal forest and the Atlantic forest. And we have to preserve that, especially because it's a very touristic place. So there is the value of the land and a lot of things that start to get in conflict. So it's something that we need to try to get together. Okay, it can be a touristic place, but we need to have the original trees. We have to preserve the forest. So it's something about finding the right balance. We need to find the right balance. And I think today, with the COVID and all the situation that you don't know from how the disease come from, we have to respect the nature more than ever. We have to understand the nature. Give it a voice. I'm talking about what's going on with the animal life and the forest being devastated. We're going to pay a huge price for that in the future. We have to be careful. It's not about even being there's a lot of problems in Brazil now about politics. You can say, oh, I'm on the right side, I'm left side, or something like that, but it doesn't matter what side you are. The nature needs to be preserved for, everybody needs to work on that.
Absolutely. And I mean, particularly that forest. That forest goes about 400 kilometers into Brazil, and that's about as far as the clouds carry the water off the ocean. And the water falls on the Atlantic forest, and then it gets transpired, it gets released back into the air, and then it gets carried on further through the Cerrado, which is another major biome in Brazil, also under threat, and all the way into the Amazon. And so all of these things are extremely well integrated, and the hydrological systems which we're talking about here, the hydrology of Brazil affects the rainfall in North Africa and in India. I think one of the very interesting things about the connection between music and nature generally is that we understand music doesn't really work, or at least, and if you want to listen to a soloist, great, but a soloist needs a whole orchestra behind him to make a beautiful piece, or a band. It needs all these pieces moving together and working together. So when we talk about balance, there's certainly, I mean, it's just a super important biome, really, a super important thing to be conscious about. Are we seeing? I understand that we're seeing consciousness about Pau Brasil, about the Pernambuco tree, outside of the classical music. Tell me a little bit about the metal connection.
About what?
About the heavy metal connection.
Oh yeah, that was really nice, because our film after the music tree was a documentary about Sepultura, and then Sepultura is the biggest Brazilian heavy metal band. It's known all over the world, and I was shooting at the time the Sepultura film, and I told the guys in the band that they knew about the music tree, and that was one of the reasons that we started working together. So we had this great concert in Brazil with the orchestra, the Orquestra Experimental de Repertório. That's like an experimental orchestra with young musicians led by the maestro Jamil Maluf, and he did like a great work having Sepultura play for free for more than 20,000 people and bring awareness to this cause. So we replanted 1,000 trees of pernambuco wood with the concert. So that was really nice. And Marco Raposa and Haroldo, that we're going to talk to Haroldo pretty soon, they were all part of this movement and this concert. So there was a huge opportunity to bring awareness through a heavy metal band, Sepultura. And it is a band, they've always had indigenous cause, always talking about the Brazilian roots. So it was like the perfect combination. It was so nice. It was very emotional that night that people could see Sepultura play with orchestra, bring awareness to this cause.
Very cool. Dr. Haroldo Lima is one of the world experts on the Pernambuco tree and the Atlantic forest generally. And we're going to be interviewing him in 2 weeks. Next week, we've got a bamboo flute master who trained in Japan for 7 years. And he's going to be talking about the connection between bamboo and music. Back to today. So we've lost quite a lot of the Atlantic forest since your film. I mean, your film opens up with a comment that there's 10% of the Atlantic forest left. As you noted, we're now talking about between 5 and 7%. What do you think that people can do in order to protect and also regenerate the forest? And I'm talking about people in the UK. I'm talking about music lovers. I'm talking about film lovers.
I think we have to start, first of all, talking about real preservation. Second of all, replanting this tree, have the seedlings in safe places and being grown properly, because there is other thing. You need to grow properly in the right land. I know they tried to have seedlings of pernambuco wood in other places, and it didn't happen out of Brazil. It's so sensitive, it's so special. So I think we have to take care of it, and today we are so connected, through the internet and everything. If something happens with the stock market, 10 seconds later, it's going to come over here. It's going to destroy here too. So what happened in Japan, we're going to have effect here in Brazil. I don't know why they don't connect it with environmental. What I'm saying? It's like you said, something happens in Brazil, Africa is going to feel it like some years later. Talking about environmental, you destroy here, the whole world is going to cry after a while. You know what I'm saying? So I don't understand why we're so connected, talking about technology and the basics, like the nature that is there. We don't take care of it like a group of nations. I know we have frontiers, but this is urgent. It's not only talking about the rainforest, but without the forests, all over the world. I know there's problems in Indonesia too. I've been to Indonesia, and they're having problem with the forest and devastation. So you have to take care of Mother Nature. It's urgent, And it's an example of the pau Brasil or Pernambuco wood. It's so paradoxical. If you think its relationship with the music, we're talking about nature, we're talking about man, musician, and we're talking about human beings absorbing the music made by a player, a musician, a tree, and a bow maker that makes the bow. You know what I'm saying? So everything is connected. I think the great example of this film is that everything is connected. And sometimes you have to question from where are these things coming from. When you buy something, okay, but what's orange? Where did it come from? Is that safe to buy it? It came from a forest that was destroyed. I think we go on now, we just click buy, and we don't research. And this time it's so easy to research from where things are coming from. We need to do our homework. We need to take care of things.
I think it's a massive irony that a lot of that clicking and buying is from a company called Amazon. I lived in the Amazon, and I remember ordering a book.
That's a nice name, right? Beautiful name.
I know when I lived in the Amazon, I ordered a book from Amazon, and they didn't deliver to the Amazon. It was interesting you say everything is connected. There's a fantastic book by a conductor by the name of Daniel Barenboim. He's the guy in charge of what are they called? The Divan West East Orchestra. And they do, it's an orchestra made out of Israeli and Palestinian musicians. and doing this work of again connecting these things which have been broken apart. And music is such a fantastic place to make harmony. Even the music of Sepultura, I think. And it's important, I think, and this is a point that's made in your film, that the threat to the Atlantic forest and the threat to pau-brasil historically hasn't really been, and even today isn't, the bow making industry. Yes, there's certainly illegal logging going on, but from the bow making industry themselves, there are a number of initiatives to try and replant and try and protect. A lot of the threats to the Atlantic forest are urban expansion, for one thing, and particularly soy cultivation. Yeah. So when we're in the supermarket and we're looking at those exceptionally cheap chickens or that exceptionally very cheap beef or something like that, bear in mind that a lot of the soy that's used to feed those animals comes straight out of pristine environments in Brazil, which are being destroyed at a rapid rate so we can eat cheap meat. And I think, like you say, it's very important to think carefully about what we buy, and not just think about it for ourselves, but also to talk to our families, talk to our friends, talk to people. You know, it's not boring. It's not boring at all to talk about the environment. If it is boring, then, I mean, what are you interested in if you're not talking about the environment? You know, what is important to you? What what else have you got? What else have you got on in your amongst your films then?
You know, just going back to what you said, I think like about everything is connected. We were talking about it, and I believe that documentaries are a great way to bring awareness. You know, I've seen documentaries that made a lot of changes. I remember, I think it was Born into Brothels. I don't know the ones about the prostitutes in India and how their kids were raised. It was a beautiful film. I remember at the time that the Árvore da Música, the music too was shown in film festivals. I had the chance to see other great films about the meat industry, especially, and I was devastated by the way that, you know, the animals they were treated before they got killed for the industry. I don't eat meat, you know. So for me was a way to see how strong documentaries can be, you know, to bring awareness to the people, trying to understand what's going on. And I remember too. I think Born talking about Daniel Barenboim. I think he's a Argentinian, and his work with the Palestinians and Israelis, I think it's great because it gives us some hope that you can go to a better place. And again with music, because I think music has a function, music has a mission, and this mission is to make people listen to, you know, listen to a lot of causes that can come through art, especially. So I think talking about films, that documentaries can be like a really good instrument to bring awareness and give. I just remember I saw the one, I think was the Weeping Camel too, about the one in the desert, the camel that the mother doesn't accept the newborn. It was a beautiful film, and through the music, she connected with a little animal. You know, so that was such a beautiful film too. Weeping Camel, you guys should look for it. I think won some awards too. So a lot of documentaries, they can help us to change our way of thinking and learning about new things and situations. You know, so that's why I'm so passionate now about documentaries.
I think that's absolutely right. And media generally, if it's beautiful, it not only do we enjoy it, but we want to share it as well. And it's one of the things that we're doing with Rain. Rain, by the way, is the umbrella organization which Trees and Music is part of. You can check us out at rainumbrella.org, and we've got all kinds of projects going on, as well as the Trees and Music project. We've got work with Indigenous nations. We've got work with Quilombo communities, communities of Black descent from the times of slavery, and other urban communities and rural communities. One of the projects we have is with the Nokikoi Indigenous Nation. They're also known as the Katakina. and we recorded a song which it's a traditional song. It's about 100 years old. Nora Simon it's called, and it tells a story. It's a very, very beautiful song, and it tells the words of this song are let's all sing and dance. Fires are arriving, strangers are arriving. Let's call the rain. And it's a beautiful song, but it's telling a very tragic story of these people getting burnt out of their land. It's telling the story of genocide. This piece of music, which we recorded with Mestre Poa, who is the leader of the Nokikoy tribe, we're now making it into a piece with an orchestral backing, and in fact, a musician by the name of Misha Molov Abado has arranged this piece, and we are recording this for a global conference on impact investment. So this is going to be going out to 33 nations, 1,600 delegates, World Bank, all of these big movers, and telling this story, telling this beautiful story of something that people should be very, very aware of when they're investing. What has the relation been between capital and Brazil and other parts of the global South in the past, and how can we change that relationship? How can we do it better? How can we do it in a more harmonious way? And I think part of the thing about media and documentaries and telling stories of beauty is that when a couple of years ago, we had a lot of news about the fires in the Amazon, and it was actually fires all over Brazil at the time, but in England we heard about the fires in the Amazon. That's not something you want to see. It's not something you want to talk about. It's not something you want to tell your friends about. But with the work of Trees of Music and with Rain, the media that we're sharing and that we're working with is telling the stories of the richness of these cultures. So people engage with these cultures and the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom as well. What would you like people to think about when they're considering Brazil, when they're considering the natural world?
I think Brazil has a mission as a country because we're so blessed with the nature on its territory that I'd like people to see with a different point of view, that there's a lot of ways that you can help. It's like I said, buying things, knowing from where it's coming from. Because sometimes it's easy to think, oh, I have nothing to do with what's going on in Brazil. Brazil is not taking care of its own things, I think it's a problem. It's bigger than being only in Brazil. You see that in the film, we show that how the wood goes illegally to other countries, especially in Europe. How the wood from Brazil it's used on different countries to produce things, and it's on an illegal way. People buying knowing that it's illegal. So I think one of the things that is very important is to take responsibility and knowing from where you're buying things. I think that's the main point. Researching. It's not a certificate. A piece of wood that I'm using here. If it comes from a legal transaction, so it's very important to know the origin of things. I think that's the main thing right now, because it helps to stop the illegal trade.
Absolutely, and that's the case for all kinds of consumables, all the kind of things we buy. It's not difficult these days to get an app on your phone. Giki is an example of them, and you can point it at the thing you're buying, and it'll tell you the whole supply chain, and it will tell you what kind of level of sustainability is involved in that. It's interesting what you say there, because Brazil is such a country that's rich in culture, such a very beautiful culture. The amount of music that's just music and not considering the rest of the culture is there's just so much of it. In a way that comes from the violent history of Brazil, particularly in Latin America. The story of slavery was by far the most violent and abusive in Brazil, and out of that arose all of this music. And I think it's important for us, and exactly what you say, we can look at current Brazilian politics and go, what the hell are they doing? We've got to remember that, when I was well, I'll tell you a story. When we were doing a project with the Kaingang indigenous nation, they've got a connection to another tree. It's the Araucaria tree. Yeah, which is, or the Paraná pine, it's called. And we were starting off this project, and I was talking to the leader of the Kaingang nation, and he said, you Europeans cut down 100 million of our trees in the 20th century to rebuild your country after the war. And this went on to the 1990s, you know. So when I was a kid listening to Nirvana, that story of extraction was still going, you know, still going strong. This isn't old history. This isn't ancient history. This is part of our current history. We've just got another minute or so. Can you tell me, Otávio, where can people see your film in the English version, I'm thinking?
Yeah, we're gonna release a special edition of the Music Tree probably next year, and you can see the trailer on the YouTube. If you look for the Music Tree, Árvore da Música, you can see the trailer. It has all this stellar cast like David Garrett, Joshua Bell, Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, Mark Copé. So it has all these great musicians. Antonio Menezes from Brazil, he's well like a top cellist player. So you can have an idea, a pretty good idea of the film before it's released on a special edition.
That's very cool. And also, I should mention the Trees of Music campaign. We are making partnerships with cinemas. For example, the Cube in Bristol. They're very excited about showing your film as well. Otávio has very kindly given us permission to show the film, and we're going to be organizing events with musicians playing before the film, then showing the film, and then having a discussion about how we can how people in various local areas can help reforest, help regenerate their own local areas. So we can be inviting local business, landowners, schools into those discussions. So have a look at rainumbrella.org, get on the mailing list there, so you can find out about all the events that we've got planned. I'd just like to say thank you very much, Otávio. It's been fascinating to talk to you. We have got next week, we've got Adrian Friedman, who's going to be talking about, as I said, the bamboo flute and the tradition there in Japan. Sorry. After that, we're talking to Haroldo Lima from the Jardim Botanical do Rio de Janeiro, the botanical gardens of Rio. And we're going to have more and more guests as we go forward. Thanks again, Otávio. It's been great to talk to you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Just one thing, I forgot to say that the book was released with a film, and I think you can find it online. It's Luciana Ferraz is the producer of the film, and I'm a partner at Interface Films. And during the filming, it was like a making of the film with pictures with the musicians and the forests and a lot of information about the Brazil wood. So it's Árvore da Música. It's the sound of a Brazil wood, a sound of Brazil, and it has pictures. And it has all the locations there we filmed. So before I forget it, that's a really nice way to know about the situation of the Pernambuco wood in Brazil too.
Super cool. Thank you very much. That book looks fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. It is my pleasure. And I congratulate you, for your work and to bring awareness for the forests and the trees. It's a very nice work, and I'm glad to be part of it right now.
Great, it's an absolute pleasure. I spent time in the Amazon in Brazil. I spent time in the Atlantic forest as well, and I have to say I owe a debt to those landscapes. When I came home from Brazil, I had 2 kids, and I learned a lot of things. So it's an absolute pleasure to work for the forest, which has treated me so well. Thanks very much, Otávio. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.